What is the essence of your being? What is the foundation of consciousness? What is the part of you that makes decisions and controls your body? What do we call that? Is it something material or something else? These are questions about fundamental aspects of our existence that most of us understand very little about. Science is just starting to scratch the surface of these questions, and there's very little consensus about the answers amongst the experts. Neuroscientists assume it all comes from the brain, but no one has been able to identify the material requirements to produce consciousness. So perhaps consciousness is not a product of certain material conditions. We also face similar challenges when we try to understand the fundamental aspects of our universe. In quantum physics, we can't even predict the location of a particle within a wave of light. We can only offer probability, and we can't fully determine its location until after it's observed. This implies that the act of observing actually affects the fabric of reality. With this type of evidence, you could argue that this means consciousness is a necessary ingredient for producing physical reality, and not vice versa. When I look at the research, it seems that there's a fair amount of evidence to suggest that this might be the truth. Philosophically, it's impossible to prove that reality exists beyond our own subjective experience of it. After much questioning about the nature of reality, this is how the philosopher René Descartes arrived at his base understanding of truth: I think, therefore I am. Through his reasoning, he couldn't prove anything to himself beyond that. And from what I've observed, I would argue that thinking being a prerequisite for existence is a little bit of a stretch. I would probably reduce that statement to simply say that there is existence. Anything beyond that could just be the result of thinking. In truth, there's no way to prove to ourselves that the reality we perceive is not just in our imagination. I think this is hard for people to grasp sometimes, and I get that. From my own observations, I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest that reality exists outside of my own imagination. If this is all in my imagination, then how come I can't control everything that happens? Why would I imagine so many different things that cause me suffering? All of my experiences suggest that I share this world with other conscious things. Have you ever felt an internal connection to someone else or nature itself? Why do we feel this? Through my meditation, I've become aware that consciousness runs throughout everything. However, I have no objective way to prove this to you. From your own observations, has anyone ever felt a sense of oneness with nature, or a connection to the universe, or a sense that you're part of something bigger? Most people I ask this question to say yes. So it seems that there's an overwhelming amount of anecdotal evidence that suggests this might be true. So how can you experience this connection? You have to put down your sense of I. This is your sense of self, or what we can call ego. Using the word I can create a perception that your consciousness is restricted to your body. With all of the contrary evidence we have, I believe it's worthwhile to question that assumption. So I think it can be a good exercise to put down your ego. Admit that there are certain things we don't fully understand, and keep seeking the truth beyond the shadow of doubt. So far, collectively, we've been unable to rely on our external observations to be able to fully understand our consciousness. So what are our options? How do we find the answer to these questions that go beyond the reach of science and our knowledge? I suggest we should turn our attention and focus inwards. That's why we meditate in Zen practice. In Zen, these types of questions are called koans. They're meant to challenge the linear thought process. They're the seeds that we plant in our mind before we meditate. If you're unable to find the answer through science, logic, and contemplation, I suggest asking yourself the question and then use meditation to completely clear your mind. This is like clearing the weeds from the soil before you plant a seed in the garden. You can use this process when linear thinking reaches its limits. Then you can see what sprouts up when you plant a seed and completely clear your mind. Tonight, I'd like you to try to understand your mind and the essence of your being. Ask yourself, what makes you who you are? When we meditate, just try to clear your mind of all thoughts, including the idea of I. Try to experience what remains when your mind is completely empty.